Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm the guy, and this is another layout update number 8, the inland quarry. Now, where I was building this was originally going to be Sandy River, but I had like an afterthought, and I'm like, I think I'll move the river more to like a town side thing that's somewhat near the main yard in the middle of the layout. I didn't really want it where it was right here because I wasn't really ready for it. I didn't plan for a river. I had like the terrain raised up, and then the base of the river would be close to like the table. As you can see right there in the back, it was cut out. But I really wanted a quarry. I already had this stuff kind of set up. Like the track was originally set up to be like a small loading area for a town and maybe a really small like passenger car or two. But it didn't really work. And when something doesn't really work, you just gotta change it. Don't be afraid to change stuff. So I fill in all the gaps and I build up the terrain around it because it's a quarry. There's a quarry nearby. We're modeling basically the loading area for the quarry. So there's a cement company there. There's going to be an office. When I get them eventually, a lot of front loading, 1950s, 60s front loading tractors and stuff like that, or like a big old conveyor for loading loose aggregate and materials and, dimensional stone and things like that. So I thought this was actually a perfect spot for it. So when I get it ready, I got to glue everything down. So this section right here, this is one of the small sections. There's another section I have on the layout. This section is actually with the Atlas flex track and Atlas turnouts, and I didn't have end scale like cork road bed or whatever, so I used HO scale road bed and just cut it in half. It worked perfectly fine. It fits on there just right. So I decided to make my little loading area right here, and I want it flush, right? Because loaders are going to be scooping loose materials or whatever, or the conveyor belt, whatever we decide to use, and dumping it right onto the cars that park here. And I have an expectation of about 3, hoppers that will fit here. Nothing more. If I bring more, then there's 2 tracks. You can, separate them, so 6 total at most. But mainly it's designed to move up 3 because the switchback that I made I'm gonna have to extend that to bring up a few more cars. That way there's room to bring cars up to Mustang Creek and to this inland quarry at the same time instead of having to make multiple trips. Now, with how I did this, I just used some spare cork roadbed to like kind of make a little dam, and build up my little paved kind of like area right here. I'll smooth down the edges, I'll shave them down, but my idea is I wanted this to be higher because it's also like a flood zone, and I'm using like quotations with my fingers there. It's a flood zone, so like this area and the road are going to be raised up, and I want sections of like the gravel dirt road that I make later to kind of be flooded in areas, or look like they would be flooded, Now, mountain carving for me takes a really long time. This was a huge section. It was both sides. This isn't going to be the biggest section on the layout, by the way, so that I'm not looking forward to that, but it needs to be done. But this took an extremely long time. Now, after all the carving is done, it's time to do the toilet paper, whatever we call it. Just my toilet paper method, and it works, and there's a perfect example of why I use this later. But, the usual toilet paper, glue. Since I'm having to put a lot of ballast and everything, I actually have to fill up all the spots where my connectors are that go through the table. Otherwise, it's like changing the oil without the drain plug in, right? The ballast is just going to fall through continuously. And anything that was too big for toilet paper, I still have a can of that great stuff, because it's great stuff. And obviously, let it dry, right? I didn't show the drying time right there, but let it dry before you put anything on top. Otherwise, you're just going to ruin it. Now, since this area is more of a quarry type of thing, I need to blend the scenery to where it's like that lush green Washington, Canada style, like ferns everywhere on the ground. I need to blend it from that to more of like a dry kind of burnt grass, dusty thing as I go to the end of this table. I also try to make the mountain painting and everything a little more muddy to help simulate that more runoff type of thing. Like, there's not a lot to run off the top of this, right? Because I mean, it's not a huge mountain range. We're compressing. That's what you do with model railroads. You compress. But on the top, there'd be a lot of rain runoff, and it would be muddy, as you can see, and it'd start carving like a big old cutouts into the rock and everything like that. So our wet method, I've perfected it. I'm going to use it for the entire layout. It's a great way, just paint and then put the scenery right on it. You don't need to glue it. But with this, we're going to start off with the really lush green, like I was saying. And then I actually used a lot of real dirt that I got from the yard. It took a while because it was wet, right? And when I was doing the scenery portion, it was just constantly raining and snowy outside. So that took a couple days too for it to dry, and I had to sift it out, break up the dirt clods and everything. But it's actually a really good scenery material, like real dirt. Oh, how'd you make that, guy? That looks like real dirt. Oh yeah, I used real dirt. Like it looks really, really good, but it has to be that powdery stuff. In HO, you can get away with I think more the grainy stuff, but this was only the dust portion was feasible in N. I blew away a lot of the bigger grains later because I didn't have a good way to sift it, but in the end it was nice. And of course I'm using my dollar store adhesive, right? Hairspray. So do you want to see a magic trick? Yep. All you have to do is just put your hand to the camera and the scenery gets done. It mainly applies to people videotaping it or YouTubers. Your results may vary. Now I go ahead and take the time to put together the buildings now. Before, on the other section of the layout, the buildings were already put together. My wife put them together, but I needed to know how big of an area to make for the gravel parking lot, the loading area, the ramps and everything for the cement plant and all that. So I had to put them together, and that also took a bit. Now I did basic painting on these a little bit later, nothing fancy, but I use some long matchsticks and I carve how big of an area I need, and then I just use a razor blade to cut out our toilet paper scenery. And this is why I love it, because there's nothing difficult about taking out a portion of the scenery. You just cut it and lift it up. It just lifts up, no problem. So I make another little dam, and this one will have a double-sided ramp so trucks can drive in and then drive out the other way. I don't know if these cement plants like this with the silos are underneath or are a drive-through. I don't know if they're drive-through or they're only open where the doors are. I'm assuming they're drive-through. So I have a double-ended ramp so they can drive in one way and come out the other way. And now that these are done completely, I go ahead and paint them a couple coats after I've sanded them and everything like that, because I want them to look kind of rough, right? I'll probably add some cracks or some wear and tear, things like that later. But I also decided oh, this has a really flush edge, so I'm gonna make kind of a little big old wood log kind of barrier where they put that, It's not a concrete barrier. I was that's a little too late to make it a concrete barrier, so I just put wood stuff, and I'll end up painting them later. But I use the same method as I did with the base of the cement plant. I used a bunch of matchsticks to kind of figure out where my border was, and I just filled it with gravel and glued it later. But now it's time for the road. I really wanted a road. I haven't made a road yet before, and I have this piece of wood that fits 2 cars perfectly, and I was yeah, I'm just going to use this and trace it, right? I go ahead and cut the wood sections out to fit right around the track, and I'm going to use these to basically be my little cast for my road right here. And again, like I was saying before, it's kind of an elevated road, so the road is very thick, right? This is a highway type road, just a single line down the center, and I want it to look very beaten up because where I attach the dirt road to it, there's a lot of truck traffic, a lot of messy, dirt, gravel, mud falling off as you pull onto the little highway. Now, one thing, I wasn't planning on putting the road in, so I actually had to shorten out this section of track right here. And it's really easy to rip the track out, especially with the way I did my scenery, it just comes up really easy. But I still needed the track there because I plan on having a dedicated switcher that is parked here And that's kind of like where the switcher sits, so it's not in the way of trains coming and going. So I just shortened it a little bit. It's like a little 70-ton switcher. It's really small, so really it only needed that. I don't know why I had so much track right there in the first place. But I'm getting the dirt road ready, and I got to take off some of the scenery where I had. And same thing with my parking lot. I just put some, ballast there, glue it down. And to make it look more, muddy, kind of worn down, dry mud after like a fresh rain, I get it really wet with a hairspray and add some dirt and then spray more, hairspray adhesive on top. It came out really good. I like it. I think it was great for the materials I had. It takes a while to dry that way, but hey, it works. And now I got to ballast my entire track. So with ballasting on the Atlas Flex Track, it's really easy to ballast. Not like Kato where you want to ballast it, but you end up putting too much and then you can't really hide it. With this, you put a lot and it just falls right into the grooves, falls right off to the sides. It's beautiful. It works out perfect. One of my favorite parts is the scenery. I employed the daughter to help me this time, but she only helped for a little bit. They get bored quick. But I ran out of foam actually, so as we were going, I was telling her, hey, we need to put a lot of the bushes, the greenery stuff closer to where Mustang Creek is, and then we can go more and more dirt. We can get more arid, more dry, more burnt grass as we go, because we want to simulate a big scene transition without a huge transition section, if you know what I mean. But I used about every bit of scenery here. I add dry grass, kind of like a lawn area that is unkempt around the quarry loading zone and everything like that. Make sure everything is sprayed down completely, and I'm pretty happy with the results I got. And then the final touches is a little light misting over the entire layout, and then I use some knock leaves to simulate kind of like weeds, because in N scale they look perfect. Just lightly salt bay some weeds all over where weeds would be. And then I get to our nice little operating session right here. And as always, thank you for watching. And if you've enjoyed the content, please feel free to subscribe. And on the next layout update, we're going to be working on the switchback, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.